Queen Velanir stood before the massive viewing screen in her throne room, her crystalline body reflecting the cold light of 1,000 stars. She had ruled the Drethian Empire for 3 centuries, maintaining perfect order across 12 star systems. Her people respected her. Other species feared her. Everything was exactly as it should be, until the humans arrived. The small ship had appeared at the edge of Drethian space 3 days ago. It was primitive compared to her fleet, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. The vessel called itself the Persistence, commanded by someone named Captain Tae-Sung. When her border patrol had detected the intrusion, Lena had ordered them to deliver the standard message: leave immediately or face destruction. She expected compliance. Every species that had ever wandered into Drethian territory had fled within hours. The Drethians had a reputation, after all. They were powerful, advanced, and completely uninterested in contact with outsiders. 300 years of isolation had served them well. But Captain Tae-Sung did not leave. Instead, he sent a message. It was polite, almost cheerful. He apologized for the intrusion and explained that his ship had been following unusual energy readings. He understood the Drethians valued their privacy, but perhaps they could meet briefly, just to establish friendly relations between their peoples. Velanir ignored the message. She ordered her patrol ships to maintain their positions and ensure the human vessels stayed outside Drethian borders. The human would grow tired and depart. They always did. The next day, another message arrived. Tae-Sung thanked her for not destroying his ship and hoped she was having a pleasant day. He mentioned that humans were naturally curious and would love to learn about Drethian culture. He offered to share information about humanity in return. Again, Velanir ignored it. Her advisors assured her the human ship had limited supplies. They would leave within a week. A week passed. The Persistence remained. Now Velanir stood in her throne room, reading the 7th message in as many days. This one included what Tae-Sung called a gift, a collection of human music and art, transmitted digitally. He wrote that he understood she was busy, but whenever she had time, he would be waiting to talk. "Your Majesty," said Commander Rekthar, her chief military officer, "this is becoming a problem. The human's presence is noticed. Some of our citizens are asking questions about who they are and why they're here." Velanir's crystalline features hardened. "Then tell our citizens the truth. They are primitives who will soon realize their mistake and depart. And if they don't depart, they will," Velanir said firmly. "No species has ever been foolish enough to challenge Drethian patience. These humans are clearly simple-minded. They'll leave." But the humans did not leave. 2 weeks became 3. 3 became 4. The Persistence sat at the border like a persistent insect, sending daily messages that grew increasingly friendly. Tae-Sung told stories about Earth, about humanity's struggles and triumphs. He described their art, their philosophy, their dreams of exploring the stars and making friends among them. Velanir ordered the messages blocked, but her communications officer admitted that some Drethians were intercepting them deliberately. The human stories were entertaining, apparently. Some found them inspiring. "This was intolerable. Send a direct warning," Velanir commanded. "Tell Captain Tae-Sung that if he does not leave within 24 hours, we will open fire." The message was sent. Velanir waited, certain this would end the matter. 20-4 hours later, Tae-Sung replied. His message was apologetic, but firm. He couldn't leave, he explained, because humanity had a rule: never give up on making friends. He understood the Drethians wanted to be alone, but he believed they might change their minds if given the chance. He would wait as long as necessary. Velanir nearly shattered her own viewing screen in rage. This is madness. What kind of species behaves this way? Her scientific advisor, a elder Drethian named Heistal, reviewed the data on humanity. According to our intelligence, humans are remarkably stubborn. They evolved on a death world called Earth, surviving countless extinction events through sheer persistence. Their entire civilization is built on the concept of never surrendering, no matter the odds. And they're idiots, Velanir snapped. Perhaps, Heistal said carefully. Or perhaps they're dangerous in ways we don't understand. Velanir dismissed this. Humans were clearly not a military threat. Their ship was barely armed, but they were annoying, and that was threat enough to her ordered existence. She decided on a new approach. If the human wouldn't leave, she would make staying unbearable. She ordered her fleet to conduct military exercises right at the border. A show of overwhelming force that would remind Captain Taezung exactly how outmatched he was. The exercises began the next day. 50 Drethian warships performed combat maneuvers within sight of the Persistence. They fired weapons, demonstrated their shields, and displayed technological superiority in every possible way. Velanir watched from her throne room, satisfied. This would surely frighten them away. Instead, Captain Taezung sent another message. He thanked her for the impressive display and noted that the Drethian ships looked beautiful in formation. He hoped the crews were comfortable during their exercises and had attached some files containing human entertainment media. In case they got bored during downtime, the Queen stared at the message in disbelief. Then came the report that made everything worse. Several Drethian ship crews had actually accessed the human files. Some had even responded with thank you messages. The humans and Drethians were communicating directly, against all protocol. Velanir immediately ordered all communication with the humans forbidden under penalty of law. But the damage was done. Word had spread throughout the Empire. There were humans at the border, friendly humans, and the Queen was refusing to talk to them. Some citizens began asking why. For the first time in 3 centuries, Queen Velanir felt her control slipping. And all because one stubborn human refused to accept rejection. She paced her throne room, her crystalline form glowing with agitation. Why won't he leave? She demanded of her empty chamber. What does he want from us? But deep down, she knew the answer. Captain Taezung had told her repeatedly. He wanted friendship. And apparently humans didn't know how to give up on that goal. Velanir decided she would wait him out. Surely, no one could maintain this foolishness forever. She was immortal, patient, and utterly committed to her isolation. The human would eventually realize his efforts were pointless. She had no idea how wrong she was about human persistence. 3 months had passed since the Persistence first arrived at the Drethian border. Queen Velanir had stopped counting the daily messages from Captain Taezung. She had also stopped reading them, though her advisors continued to summarize their contents. Today's message apparently included a recipe for something. It's called kimchi and a cheerful update about the weather on Taesung's ship. The weather. On a spaceship, the humans were documenting their weather patterns and sharing them as if anyone cared. But what truly infuriated Velanir was the growth of human presence. The Persistence was no longer alone. Over the past month, 7 more human ships had arrived. They had built a small station at the border, which they called the waiting room. They claimed it was temporary, just a comfortable place to wait until the Drethians were ready to talk. Your Majesty, we must address this situation, Commander Rector said during the morning briefing. The human station is now broadcasting constantly. Our citizens are listening. Some have even started learning human languages. Velanir felt her crystalline core pulse with anger. Learning their languages? Why would anyone waste time on such primitive communication? Because the humans are entertaining, said Heistel quietly. Their stories, their music, their humor, it's all very different from our culture. Some of our people find it refreshing. Refreshing, Velanir repeated, her voice dangerously cold. Our culture has thrived for millennia without needing to be refreshed by primitives. Of course, Your Majesty, Heistel said quickly. I'm merely reporting what I've observed. Velanir dismissed the council and sat alone in her throne room, considering her options. She could destroy the human station easily. One command, and her fleet would reduce it to debris. But that would make her look weak, as if she feared a handful of unarmed humans. Besides, there would be political consequences. The humans apparently had allies among the neutral systems. And attacking unprovoked would damage Drethian reputation. No, she needed a different approach. She needed someone who could make the humans understand that their efforts were truly hopeless. Her thoughts turned to Commander Haijin, one of her most unusual officers. Haijin was Drethian by birth, but had been raised by humans after being rescued from a spatial anomaly as a child. She had eventually returned to Drethian space and joined the military, but she maintained connections to human culture. If anyone could make Captain Taesong see reason, it would be her. Velanir summoned Hyjin to the palace. The commander arrived within hours, her crystalline form showing traces of human influence in her mannerisms. She bowed respectfully, but with a casualness that marked her as different from pure Drethians. "You sent for me, Your Majesty?" "I have a task for you," Velanir said. "You will go to this human station and explain to Captain Taesun that his mission is pointless. Make him understand that Drethians do not want contact, will never want contact, and that he should take his ships and leave." Hyjin hesitated. "Your Majesty, I'm not sure that will work. Humans are extraordinarily persistent when they believe in something." "Then make them stop believing," Velanir commanded. "That's an order." Hyjin bowed and departed. Velanir watched her leave, confident this would finally end the situation. 2 days later, Hyjin returned. Her report was not what Velanir wanted to hear. "I met with Captain Taesung and his first officer, Ji Woo," Hyjin explained. "They were very welcoming. They gave me a tour of their station and introduced me to their crew. They asked about Drethian culture and listened carefully to everything I said. And did you tell them to leave?" "I did, Your Majesty. Multiple times." And Captain Taesung thanked me for being direct. Then he explained that humans have a concept they call stubbornness. He said it's not always logical, but it's deeply embedded in their nature. They survived impossible odds on their homeworld, not through superior intelligence or technology, but through refusing to quit. Velanir felt a chill despite her crystalline body generating no actual temperature. "Are you telling me they won't leave no matter what we do?" "Officer Ji Woo told me a story," Hyjin continued. "On Earth, there was a time when humans nearly went extinct. Their population dropped to a few thousand individuals. By all logic, they should have died out, but they didn't. They survived through sheer determination. Ji Woo said that humans don't know how to give up, especially on things that matter to them, and we matter to them." Velanir asked incredulously. "Friendship matters to them," Hyjin corrected. "They've decided that befriending the Drethians is worth pursuing. Therefore, they'll pursue it until we either accept or until something physically prevents them." Velanir was silent for a long moment. Then she made a decision. If the humans wanted a show of force, she would give them one they couldn't ignore. She would assemble her entire war fleet and conduct exercises that would make her earlier display look like child's play. Surely even humans would understand the message when faced with such overwhelming power. The fleet assembled over the next week. 200 warships, the pride of the Drethian Empire, gathered at the border. They performed intricate combat maneuvers, fired massive weapons into empty space, and demonstrated shield technologies that could withstand the blast of a small star. The human station went quiet during the display. Velanir allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Finally, they understood. Then the packages started arriving. Small cargo pods, launched from the human station, drifted toward the Drethian ships. When scanned, they contained no weapons or explosives. Instead, they held what the humans called care packages, comfort items, entertainment media, games, and food suitable for Drethian biology. Attached to each package was a note from Captain Taesung. "You all look like you're working hard. We thought you might appreciate these to help pass the time. Stay safe out there, neighbors." Neighbors. They had called the Drethian military neighbors. Velanir ordered the packages destroyed immediately, but reports indicated that several ship crews had already retrieved them. Some captains reported that their crew morale had actually improved after accessing the human entertainment files. This was spiraling beyond control. Velanir retreated to her private chambers, something she rarely did. She accessed one of the human entertainment files that had been confiscated for analysis. It was a simple story about a human child who kept trying to fly, despite failing repeatedly. Eventually, through persistence and help from friends, the child succeeded. The message was painfully obvious. Humans valued persistence above all else. They celebrated it, taught it to their children. built their entire civilization around it, and they had decided to be persistent. About befriending the Drethians, Velanir realized, with growing horror that these humans might actually never leave. They weren't bluffing or playing a strategic game. They genuinely believed that if they waited long enough, tried hard enough, and remained friendly enough, the Drethians would eventually accept them, for the first time in 3 centuries. Queen Velanir felt genuine uncertainty. How did one defeat an enemy who refused to acknowledge defeat? How did one deter people who didn't understand the meaning of impossible? She stared at the stars beyond her window, knowing that somewhere out there, Captain Taesung was probably writing tomorrow's cheerful message. The waiting game had only just begun. 6 months had transformed Queen Velanir's perfectly ordered empire into chaos. Not the violent kind of chaos that came from war or rebellion, but something far more insidious. The humans had infected Drethian culture with their persistent friendliness, and the infection was spreading. Velanir reviewed the reports with growing dismay. 30% of her citizens now regularly consumed human media. Educational institutions were offering courses in human languages. Some Drethian artists had started incorporating human styles into their work. There were even restaurants on the capital world serving human-style food. It's modified for Drethian biology. Worst of all, young Drethians were adopting human philosophy. They talked about friendship, openness, and cooperation. Concepts that had no place in traditional Drethian society. This is cultural invasion, Velanir declared to her council. The humans are destroying us without firing a single shot. Your Majesty, said Councillor Dalnam, a noble who had become increasingly sympathetic to the human presence. Perhaps we should consider that our people are choosing this. No one is forcing them to engage with human culture. Velanir's crystalline body flared with anger. They don't understand what they're choosing. 3 centuries of isolation have kept us strong, independent, and pure. These humans will corrupt everything we've built. Dalnam fell silent, but Velanir could see disagreement in her eyes. The council was dividing on this issue, another sign of the damage the humans were causing. Before she could continue the discussion, an urgent alert flashed across the chamber's displays. Commander Rekther's voice cut through the room. Your Majesty, we have a situation. The Krythex Dominion has launched an attack on Mining Colony 17. Multiple ships, heavy weapons. They caught us completely by surprise. Velanir rose from her throne. The Krythex were an aggressive neighboring empire that had been probing Drethian defenses for years. They had apparently decided this moment of internal division was the perfect time to strike. Deploy the 5th and 7th fleets, she commanded. Evacuate the colony and prepare for full engagement. The 5th fleet is 6 hours away, Rekthar reported. The 7th is 8 hours out. The colony won't last that long, Your Majesty. They're already reporting heavy casualties. Velanir felt her core pulse with fury and helplessness. The mining colony held 15,000 Drethian citizens. She couldn't abandon them, but she couldn't save them either. Then a new voice cut into the command channel. It was Captain Taesung. Queen Velanir, this is the persistence. We've detected the attack on your colony. We're 3 hours closer than your fleets. We can hold the Krythex off until your ships arrive. Request permission to assist. Velanir's first instinct was to refuse. Accept help from the humans? Impossible. It would be admitting weakness, admitting that she needed them. But 15,000 lives hung in the balance. I don't recall asking for your help. Human, she said coldly. I know, Taesung replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. But we're neighbors, remember? And neighbors help each other. We're going in whether you give permission or not. Just thought we'd be polite and ask first. The channel cut off. Velanir stared at the display showing the human ships already accelerating toward the battle zone. Your Majesty? Rekthar asked. What are your orders? Velanir was trapped. If she ordered the humans to stand down and the colony fell, her people would never forgive her. If she let the humans fight and they succeeded, she would owe them a debt. Let them go, she said finally, and tell our fleets to hurry. The next 3 hours were the longest of Velanir's long life. She watched through long-range sensors as 8 human ships jumped into the combat zone. They were hopelessly outnumbered by the 20 Krythex warships besieging the colony. The humans should have been destroyed in minutes. Their ships were smaller, their weapons weaker, their shields inferior to both Drethian and Krythex technology. But the humans didn't fight like any species Velanir had ever seen. They were reckless. One human frigate deliberately flew into the middle of the Krythex formation, drawing fire from 6 ships at once, while the others rescued evacuation shuttles from the colony. Another human ship used its own hull as a shield to protect damaged Drethian defenses. Taking hits that would have killed the defenders, they were creative. Captain Taesung's persistence somehow managed to hack Krythex communications and fill their channels with Earth music at deafening volume, disrupting their coordination. Another human captain, Jiwoo, used mining explosives from the colony to create improvised mines that crippled 2 Krythex cruisers, and they absolutely refused to retreat, even as their ships took devastating damage, even as escape was possible. The humans held their ground. They fought for every second, giving the Drethian colonists time to evacuate. One moment stood out above all others. A young human pilot named Subin was escorting the last evacuation shuttle when a Krythex fighter damaged her ship's engines. She was drifting, dead in space, with the enemy closing in. But her escape pod still had power, instead of using it to save herself. Subin transferred all her pod's energy to the damaged evacuation shuttle, carrying 30 Drethian children. The shuttle's engines came back online, and it jumped to safety. Subin drifted in space, her ship powerless, waiting for either rescue or death. Velanir watched this unfold and felt something crack inside her crystalline heart. This human, this stranger from a species she had rejected and insulted for months, had just sacrificed herself for Drethian children she had never met. "Dispatch a rescue ship immediately," Velanir commanded. "Get that human pilot to safety now." "Already on it, Your Majesty," Hyjin reported. "I have sent our fastest retrieval craft." By the time the Drethian 5th Fleet arrived, the battle was over. The humans had held. 3 of their 8 ships were destroyed. 2 more were crippled. But they had protected the colony long enough for all the civilians to escape. Subin was recovered alive, barely. She was immediately transferred to the best Drethian medical facility. Velanir stood in her throne room, staring at the casualty reports. 43 humans had died defending Drethian citizens. 43 people who had no obligation to help, who had been rejected and ignored for months, who had died protecting the very people who wanted them to leave. She opened a direct channel to Captain Taesung. His face appeared on her screen, tired and covered in small injuries, but still smiling that infuriating human smile. "Why?" Velanir demanded. "Why would you risk your people for strangers who have shown you nothing but hostility?" Taesung's smile softened. "Because that's what neighbors do, Your Majesty. And whether you accept it or not, we're your neighbors now. We help neighbors in trouble. It's just the human way." "I didn't ask for your help," she said, but her voice lacked its usual coldness. "I know," Taesung said gently, "but you needed it anyway. Everyone needs help sometimes, even proud queens of powerful empires." Velanir ended the transmission before she said something she would regret. She sat in her throne for a long time, thinking about sacrifice and stubbornness and the strange species that refused to take no for an answer. Finally, she gave an order that shocked her entire council. "Send medical supplies and repair equipment to the human ships, and assign a recovery team to help salvage their destroyed vessels. If anyone asks, tell them it's payment for services rendered, nothing more." It wasn't much. It wasn't acceptance or friendship, but it was the first crack in 3 centuries of isolation. And deep down, Velanir knew there was no going back. 1 year had passed since the first human ship appeared at the Drethian border. 1 year of persistent messages, cultural exchange, and slowly crumbling walls. Queen Velanir felt those walls closing in around her, threatening the isolation she had maintained for 3 centuries. The humans had not only remained, but had flourished. Their station at the border had grown into a proper settlement with trade facilities and cultural centers. Worse, 5 nearby neutral systems had established relations with the humans and were now putting pressure on Velanir to do the same, Your Majesty. The Corvin Collective has sent another message, her communications officer reported during the morning briefing. They're asking why we refuse to engage with such friendly and helpful neighbors. They say it reflects poorly on us. Velanir's crystalline form pulsed with barely contained anger. Tell the Corvans to mind their own business. But she couldn't escape the whispers spreading through her own empire. After the battle at Mining Colony 17, human popularity among her people had skyrocketed. The 43 humans who died defending Drethian citizens were now remembered as heroes. Subin, the pilot who sacrificed herself, had recovered and become something of a cultural icon. Even worse, some Drethian nobles were openly advocating for acceptance of the humans. Councillor Dalnam led this faction. Her support had grown to include nearly a third of the council. Velanir had finally had enough. She called an emergency council session and demanded answers. You swore loyalty to the Drethian Empire, she said, her voice sharp as crystal breaking. Yet you advocate for abandoning everything we've built. Dalnam stood calmly. Your Majesty, I advocate for evolution, not abandonment. Our isolation served us well for centuries, but the galaxy has changed. The humans have shown us that connection doesn't mean weakness. They've shown us nothing but disruption, Velanir countered. Our culture is being diluted, our traditions questioned, our very identity challenged. And you call this progress? I call it growth, Dalnam said quietly. Your Majesty, our birth rates have increased by 12% since the humans arrived. Depression rates are down. Crime has decreased. Our people are happier. Can you honestly say that means nothing? Velanir wanted to argue, but the data supported Dalnam's claims. She had reviewed the statistics herself. The cultural exchange had brought measurable benefits to Drethian society, but admitting that felt like surrendering everything she believed in. This council is dismissed, she declared. And Councillor Dalnam, consider yourself under investigation for sedition. The council chamber emptied in shocked silence. Dalnam bowed respectfully, showing no fear, which only infuriated Velanir more. That night, alone in her private chambers, Velanir did something she had never done before. She accessed the human cultural database and selected a piece at random. It was a book, a simple human story about a queen who built walls around her kingdom to protect her people, only to realize she had imprisoned them instead. The parallels were uncomfortably obvious. Velanir threw the display across the room, watching it shatter against the crystalline wall. She made her decision then. She would summon Captain Taysoon to her throne world for a final confrontation. She would give him an ultimatum: leave forever, or she would declare war on humanity. No more games. No more waiting. This ended now, one way or another. The summons was sent. To her surprise, Taesong accepted immediately. 3 days later, a small human diplomatic vessel landed on the throne world. Captain Taesong emerged with only 3 companions: Officer Jiwoo, a cultural ambassador named Young Mi, and surprisingly, Commander Haijin, who had apparently decided to stand with the humans. Velanir arranged for the confrontation to be broadcast across the entire Drethian Empire. Let her people see the humans for what they truly were. Let them witness her final rejection of this cultural invasion. The throne room was packed with nobles, military commanders, and media representatives. Taesoon walked in calmly, looking around with open curiosity and what seemed like genuine appreciation for Drethian architecture. Your Majesty, he said, bowing respectfully. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I did not agree, Velanir said coldly. I summoned you here to deliver an ultimatum. You and your people will leave Drethian space immediately and never return. If you refuse, I will consider it an act of war. The room fell silent. Taesung's expression remained calm, almost sad. May I ask why, Your Majesty? And something inside Velanir broke. All the frustration, anger, and confusion of the past year erupted. Why? She demanded, her voice rising. Because you've destroyed everything. For 300 years, we had order, stability, and purpose. We knew who we were and what we valued. Then you arrived, uninvited and unwanted, and you refused to leave. You sat at our border with your friendly messages and your gifts and your insufferable optimism. She descended from her throne, her crystalline body glowing with emotion. You saved our people when you had no reason to. You died for us when we had shown you nothing but rejection. You made our citizens question their beliefs, made them wonder if isolation was really strength. You showed them laughter and joy and connection, and now they look at me and wonder why I won't give them the same. Velanir stopped directly in front of Taesong, her voice dropping to something almost like pain. Why won't you leave me alone, human? Why won't you just let me maintain my empire the way it has always been? What do you want from us that you pursue us with such relentless determination? The throne room was absolutely silent. Every eye was on Taesong as he considered his response. Your Majesty, he said softly, we don't want anything from you. We want something for you. We want you to know that you're not alone in this galaxy, that you don't have to carry everything by yourself. That friendship is offered freely, not because you earned it or because we need something in return, but simply because we believe everyone deserves connection. I don't want connection, Velanir said. But her voice lacked conviction. Maybe not, Taesong agreed, but I think your people do. And I think maybe, deep down, you do too. Otherwise, why would our presence bother you so much? If you truly didn't care, you would have ignored us completely. Before Velanir could respond, urgent alarms blared throughout the palace. Commander Rekther's voice cut through the chaos. Your Majesty, emergency alert. The Krythex Dominion has launched a massive invasion. 300 ships, targeting our core systems. They're claiming this is retaliation for our association with humans, and that Eve groaned weak. The throne room erupted in panic. Velanir felt her core freeze. 300 ships was 3 times the size of the fleet that had attacked the mining colony. The Krythex had been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and they had chosen now, when the Empire was divided over the human question. How long do we have? Velanir asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. They'll reach our outer defense grid in 4 hours, Rekther reported. Your Majesty, our analysts are already running the numbers. We can hold them off for a time, but without significant reinforcements, we will fall. Velanir turned to find Taesong still standing there, his expression serious but not frightened. Your Majesty, he said quietly, humanity's entire fleet is ready to assist. Just say the word. It was the moment Velanir had been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. The choice between pride and survival, between isolation and acceptance, between everything she had been and everything she might become. Around her, the throne room waited for her decision. The broadcast carried her silence across the Empire. Millions of Drethians watched their queen stand at the crossroads of history. Velanir closed her eyes. Thinking of Subin drifting in space, of 43 humans who died for people they barely knew, of a captain who had waited a full year just for the chance at friendship, she opened her eyes and looked at Taesong. How soon can your fleet arrive? The human fleet arrived within 2 hours, which should have been impossible. Captain Taesong later explained that they had been positioned strategically around Drethian space for months, just in case they were needed. Just in case the Drethians finally accepted their help. Velanir watched from her command center as the combined forces assembled. 75 human warships joined her fleet of 150 Drethian vessels. The humans were still outnumbered, still technologically inferior in many ways. But they brought something the numbers couldn't measure. They brought hope. Joint Fleet Command established, Commander Hyjin reported. She had taken charge of coordinating the two forces, her unique background making her perfect for the role. Human and Drethian ships are integrating their tactical systems now. Velanir had initially refused to combine command, insisting that Drethian forces remain independent. But Taesong had quietly pointed out that coordinated forces would save more lives on both sides. Reluctantly, she had agreed. Now she watched as Drethian and human officers worked side by side, sharing strategies and tactics. It was surreal seeing her people collaborate so seamlessly with the very outsiders she had tried to keep away for a year. The Krythex fleet will reach the outer defense grid in 30 minutes. Rektha announced. They're not even trying to hide their approach. They're confident they can overwhelm us. Then let's prove them wrong, said a new voice. It was Jahayan, captain of a human heavy cruiser. His ship had the worst safety rating in the human fleet because he kept modifying it with experimental weapons. We've been waiting to show you what humans can really do in a fight. Velanir wanted to feel insulted by his casual tone, but something in his confidence was almost reassuring. These humans had fought impossible odds before, and won. Maybe they could do it again. The Krithek's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of metallic insects. 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons. Their commander, Overlord Zarkul, opened a communication channel to gloat. Queen Velanir, your empire ends today. We have watched you grow weak, corrupted by these primitive humans. Now we will cleanse this region of space of both Drethian arrogance and human infection. Velanir prepared a defiant response. But Taesong spoke first. Overlord Zarkul, this is Captain Taesong of the human fleet. I'd like to remind you of something important about humans. We don't know when to quit. We also really don't like bullies. This is your one chance to turn around. Zarkul's laughter echoed across the channel. Humans offering us a chance to flee? You're even more deluded than I thought. Your choice, Taesun said, almost cheerfully. Don't say we didn't warn you. The battle began with the Kritheks launching a massive missile barrage, enough firepower to obliterate a small moon. The combined fleet's shields flared under the assault, and several ships took damage, but the line held. Then the humans showed what they had learned from months of studying Drethian technology. They had adapted their shields using Drethian crystal harmonics, making them far more efficient. They had modified their weapons with Drethian energy-focusing techniques, increasing their firepower significantly. But more importantly, they fought with the same reckless creativity they had shown at Mining Colony 17, now coordinated with Drethian tactical precision Jahin's experimental weapons. Turned out to be mining lasers modified to overload Krithek's shield frequencies. 3 enemy cruisers went dark in the first exchange. A young human pilot coordinated with a Drethian squadron to create a pincer movement that destroyed an entire Krithek's wing. The battle raged for hours. Ships from both sides fell, brave souls sacrificed themselves for their comrades, and the space around Drethian territory became a graveyard of shattered vessels. Velanir coordinated from her command ship, but she found herself constantly distracted by the humans. They were everywhere, covering Drethian ships that took damage, pulling off impossible maneuvers to save stranded crews, and refusing to retreat even when tactical logic demanded it. Then disaster struck. A Krithek's assault group punched through the defensive line and made straight for Velanir's flagship. Before her escorts could react, boarding pods slammed into her hull. Alarms blared as Krithek soldiers breached the ship. Your Majesty, get to the escape shuttles, Rekthar commanded, even as he organized defense teams. We'll hold them off.
But the Kritheks had brought overwhelming numbers.
They cut through Drethian defenders, pushing toward the bridge. Velanir prepared to make her last stand in the throne room, determined to die defending her ship if necessary. Then a familiar voice crackled over her communicator. Hang on, Your Majesty. Cavalry's coming. Taesung's ship, the Persistence, crashed through the Krithek's formation in a maneuver that should have torn it apart. The ship's hull screamed under the stress. But it reached Velanir's flagship and clamped on with magnetic docking clamps. The captain himself led the boarding party. Along with Jiwoo and 24 human marines, they cut through the ship's emergency hatches and engaged the Krithek's invaders with fierce determination. Velanir watched on her monitors as the humans fought their way through her ship. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, covering each other with practiced efficiency. But they were taking casualties. She saw human marines fall, saw Taesong take a direct hit that shattered his arm, but he kept fighting. They reached the throne room just as the Kritheks broke through the final defenses. For a few chaotic minutes, the crystalline chamber became a battlefield. Energy weapons fired, bodies fell, and Velanir found herself fighting back-to-back with Captain Taesun, the human she had tried so hard to drive away. You know, Taesun said, somehow maintaining conversation while fighting for his life. This is not how I imagined our first meeting would go. You imagined it? Velanir asked, using her crystalline abilities to refract enemy fire. All the time, he admitted, using his one good arm to fire his weapon. I pictured us having tea, talking about our cultures, maybe even laughing together. Not fighting space pirates in your throne room? Despite everything, Velanir almost laughed. Why? Why did you imagine that? Why did you care so much? Taesong shot down another Krithak soldier before answering. Because we saw who you could be, not just who you were. We saw a proud, strong civilization that had protected itself for centuries. We thought maybe you were ready to stop being alone. The words hit harder than any weapon. Before Velanir could respond, Giwu signaled that the last Kryth exporting team had been eliminated. Outside, the combined fleet had finally broken the Krythex assault. Overlord Zarkal, seeing his invasion failing, ordered a retreat. The surviving Krythex ships fled into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind their dead and defeated. The battle was won, but at terrible cost. 15 Drethian ships destroyed, 23 human vessels lost, thousands dead on both sides. The victory felt hollow as Velanir surveyed the casualty reports. She found Taesoon in her ship's medical bay, having his shattered arm treated. He looked exhausted but was still smiling at something Jiwoo had said. Captain, Velanir said, and they both turned to her. A word in private? Taesoon followed her to a quiet observation deck. They stood looking out at the debris field that marked their victory. You asked why we won't leave you alone? Taesong said quietly. The answer is because that's not what humans do. We don't abandon potential friends. We don't give up on people. Even when you pushed us away, even when you threatened us, we saw who you could be. We saw someone worth waiting for. And if I had never changed my mind? Velanir asked. If I had remained isolated forever? Then we would have waited forever, Taesoon said simply. That's what makes us human. We're too stubborn to know when to quit, especially on things that matter. And you mattered. Velanir felt something fundamental shift inside her. For 3 centuries, she had believed strength meant standing alone. But watching humans and Drethians fight together, die together, and save each other, she finally understood. Real strength came from connection, not isolation. I was wrong, she said quietly. About you. About isolation. About everything. Taesong's smile was gentle. You weren't wrong to protect your people. You just didn't realize you could protect them better with allies. 2 weeks later, the entire galaxy watched as Queen Velanir signed the Treaty of Persistence, formally establishing alliance and friendship between the Drethian Empire and humanity. The document was named after Taesong's ship, the vessel that had started everything by simply refusing to leave at the signing ceremony. Reporters asked Velanir what had changed her mind. Humans showed me that persistence isn't just stubbornness, she said. It's hope. It's believing in something better, even when all evidence says to give up. Humans never gave up on us, even when we gave them every reason to. They saw not who we were, but who we could become. And they waited until we were ready to see it too. Later, in a private moment, Taesoon asked her one final question. Do you regret it? Letting us in? Velanir looked out at her throne world, where young Drethians and humans were already learning together at the newly established Joint Academy. She saw her people laughing, sharing stories, building friendships that would have been impossible a year ago. She said honestly, I regret only that it took me so long. You were right, Captain. We were ready to stop being alone. I just needed someone stubborn enough to help me see it. Taesong grinned. Stubbornness is humanity's greatest talent. Among others, Velanir added, allowing herself a small smile. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for being worth the wait, Taesung replied. That's what friends do. And for the first time in 300 years, Queen Velanir wasn't alone anymore.